does. Yes, we are live. Hi, Facebook people. This is the Jewish Collaborative of Orange County.
Yes,
Live.
I want to just welcome all of you. I think I have some new faces, some old friends who may not have participated in our programs before, but the Jewish Collaborative of Orange County is based in Orange County, California. Most of our programs since COVID are virtual and sort of, nationally available, and we're just delighted to have you here. This course, the Advanced Learning Institute, is the um, sort of the product of something that was going on before COVID, which there was a group of learners, adult learners in Orange County, who had been studying together for nearly 2 decades, starting with a Melton curriculum and then going on. And their in-person every Tuesday program fell under our umbrella in about 2016. And when they could no longer meet in person, we went online. So the foundation, it became Advanced Learning Institute. And I've been able to engage some of my most exciting and unique and out of the box thinking colleagues to come and teach and expose them to new faces, which is just always such the sharing of ideas. And Torah is the biggest gift that we can give to each other. So I'm welcoming all of you here. I'm giving a special hug and kiss to Cantor Paula Pepperstone. So happy to see you. And I'm going to turn our second session of 4, Pop Culture and the Rabbis, sort of a look at prayer, over to my dear friend, Matt.
Thank you so much to Rabbi Tilchin. Hi, everybody. Welcome back this week. Last week, we covered what we're really covering through this all 4 sessions is the intertext, the movie scenes, the scenes from Torah behind so many of the prayers that we say and can, operate on the surface level on the Peshat. Okay, this is what this says, blah, 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 blah. But if you understand the allusions, the nerdiness, okay, even call it the sacred nerdiness of the rabbis, then we can have a deeper appreciation perhaps from our own areas of being a geek or own areas of having deep passions or interests. So today we're going to look at Shema uvirchoteha, Shema and her blessings. And we're really, because it's a very deep thing, we only are really going to get to zoom in on the first blessing. Really the absolute first blessing that we say after the Baruch Hu, after everyone's called together to worship formally. It's, 9:45 a.m., depends if it's 7:18 a.m. on a weekday, right? After the Baruch Hu, we're going to get to the very first sentence. But we're going to get to that in about 25 minutes. For now, I want to take a deep breath and take yourself back to the 1968, if you were in watching films in 1968. Certainly, this was you could get this at what used to be called a video store. I just want to show you this classic scene, and then I want to get your reactions to it. So this, we're going to start with this little movie, which is only about a minute. Okay, and a minute and a half. All right. Raise your hand if you can hear the very low tones. Good. Mazel tov.
Let's go, toes.
Okay. All right, let me get that off. Da, 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 da. See, they think they keep playing on my end. There we go. Now all done with that. So,
When you say video store, you should have said Zichronam Livracha.
Zichronam Livracha, there's probably one or two, one or two. So, what is the feel? Tell me about that scene. What is the feeling that you get seeing that? And why?
Awe.
Yes, Elias.
Tohu vavohu. It's total beginning, nothingness, and well, maybe not chaos, but it's like something is about to happen. It's a feeling of something is about to happen.
There's a great sense of something great is about to happen, or there's a feeling that there's order that's made from this sort of cosmos scene that we're seeing. Yes, very good. Ruth.
Also a sense of awe. I think that the music is, the way it's drawn out is a sense of awe.
Yeah, so there's a real sense of wonder, right? And the music, with the low,
I think a sense of rising up.
A sense of rising up, a sense of ascent. Yes, very good.
Universal awareness of not knowing what's coming, but it must be dramatic because of the expectations of starting of a scene, and then the music, and you sit back and you have great expectations of something that is going to blow your mind.
Yeah, this really the music really gives it's writing a big check for the movie, right? It's great, it's incredibly grand, and it's 90 seconds into the whole thing, right? Did anyone actually see this or remember? Because this came out in '68. This was right before the moon landing, right? What can someone describe to me, Sylvia? Can you describe me what the feeling was watching this on the big screen?
It almost overpowering because you got it in the big screen. That's where you got it. It was right there. You were right there, and that as the music came up, it was all around you. It was almost like surround sound, but even better. It's all dark. It was a wow.
It's a powerful IMAX moment. Yeah, big wow.
Yes.
Ria, go ahead.
I wanted to say that my all-time favorite film. Wow, it went from tohu vavohu to artificial intelligence. Oh my goodness. It spanned all of existence, and the going from that sun, the sunrise, and then the primitive human bowing down to this whatever, and yes, if you ever get a chance to see it, and we saw it on the big screen, right, Sylvia?
Good.
We sure did. That's what it was.
So I love this sense of, wonder, as Barbara says, the building of suspense to a climax of awareness. There's this big sense of awe, right? I love this thing that the context is weird because it's Rabbi Shai Held, who's the teacher I love. He was trying to summarize Abraham Joshua Heschel, and he did it on wonder. And he did it saying, HaKofer befela eino chelek ba'olam hazeh. So this is a play on a pasuk, but he says, he who has no wonder has no place in this world. That for Heschel, the fundamental experience of religious feeling comes, for any religion really, comes from the experience of wonder. And so here we, in this scene, we have this looking at the cosmos, and the music helps it, of course. We have this sense of wonder. That's a primal human religious, or spirit. You can say spiritual if you don't want to identify it with a specific religion yet. Religious feeling of feeling wonder. Now, I want to move us forward in the movie. We're going to watch this exact same theme one more time, but with a different thing going on in the scene. All right. I promise you this has something to do with prayer. We're going to get there, but we have a lot of pop culture to get through first. All right. Let me go back to our handy dandy movie screen as hold on a second. No, let me stop share on that. Oh, there it is. It was just hiding. Okay. There we go. Google Chrome. Okay. Second instance of this theme. Everyone see the monkeys? All right. Here come the monkeys. Or one monkey, really. One very smart monkey. Okay. So, slightly different. Now, with this second version, what feeling does this scene, same music, what feeling does this scene give you? Okay. Elias.
That some big step has been taken in terms of primate progress. The use of the opposing thumbs is a major moment.
Okay, we have a sense of progress going on. Yes, Sylvia. I see your hand up.
Yep, I'm sorry, I had to find a mute button. I see, well, my reaction is a sense of like terror. This guy is like the primate. He's all of a sudden, he can use his hand and this opposable thumb, but to what purpose? Destruction. And I can hear it, and that's how the music makes me feel too.
Very nice. So we have a different thing. We had great possibilities before in the big scene, and now the same music is the background to an ape discovering how to kill with something with a dead animal bone that he has found. Right? It's perhaps a different feeling emerging from that. Yes, Ria, and then I might even call someone on some other people. Ria, please.
Okay, so this is the arc of the film, and so tools being able to use tools. So we start with the bone, which becomes a tool for eating and also for destruction, and then at the end, Al, which is the artificial intelligence, which turns against humans, and the tool, we become the tool of the tool. It is so terrific.
In the age of ChatGPT, I know other people have said this so far. This is actually, I didn't mean to terrify us all this morning, but there is, some. Perhaps a film worth remembering early on, from 50 years ago, had an inclination about some of the downsides. Yes, Asher, please.
It seems to me that the primate is dealing with the skeleton of a predecessor, and he's getting rid of the past and throwing the bones away to enter the future.
Okay, so there's a repurposing of that which came before to move on into the future, which for him involves being able to get to catch some prey a lot easier, which certainly might be good for him, less good for the prey. And anyone else can anyone make a connection between these two scenes, which have the identical music?
Evolution of creation and going back from the past to the future in a full cycle or circle. So maybe it's starting with the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, and the species in its, whether it's in the term of evolution, Darwin's theory, and how apes and animals evolved into the humans that we have today. And this is a process of time. So the creation of the world is a time thing. It's not literally 6 days and 7 days. It's that period of time. So how we evolved from what we were, when we have the confidence to do what we can, and then move on from there and continue to evolve, maybe in a good way, but maybe in a bad way.
So yes, so there's a sense of evolution, that there's a sense of progress in the music, and yet the progress may not be ultimately to something so good. Ruth, why don't you hop in? Go ahead.
Well, I if you look at the landscape such as it is, it still looked kind of bare and, almost looked like Mars or the moon, you know what I mean? And, there didn't seem to be any vegetation or anything, but if this is I go along with what Alex said. I mean, this is not Adam, but this is certainly a precursor of Adam. And, it's like we're on our way before we get to people. And then I think Ria or Sylvia said, we're going to get to AI. We're really on a journey from this primitive. We have to go somewhere. Where are we going to go? It was a question to me.
So there's a question of where are we going with all of this, these changes, right? And this is some of the earliest changes that we see, and then of course when the AI part of the movie later. I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that. We have some of the more deleterious possible effects. And to add what Barbara, put in the chat, both of these the music in both settings, really sort of builds an emotional evaluation of the purpose of what's going on. And so we're gonna move forward for a little from 2001, although not too much, and turn toward the music. But to conclude that, as we are approaching the question of how do we feel when we look out at the world, 2001: A Space Odyssey and its use of this music and these juxtaposed images looks and sees perhaps a sense of profound wonder, which is a great spiritual feeling, but also maybe a sense of fear that out of that at the same evolution evolves a moment where out of dead bodies, our ancestor of an animal, our ape ancestors discover that they can make a tool which brings them both more power and brings the world more death. So there's a possible real downside to the sense of what the world is, and whilst coexisting with this great sense of wonder conveyed by the music. We're inching forward into Judaism, but we have a little bit to go before we get there. Now,
what about the dry bone syndrome?
You mean in Ezekiel?
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of quoting Ezekiel when it comes to this particular scene, but let me move into the music for a second, because I think that will bring us into the tefillah part of what we're going to talk about today. Can anyone tell me what this piece of music is? Someone who hasn't spoken yet today. I see Anne. Anne and Marilyn, and Anne is now nodding. Yes, you were both right. This is Also sprach Zarathustra by
Strauss.
By Richard Strauss. Yes, by Strauss. He wrote about 1896. Almost at the turn of the 20th century. Can someone tell me a little bit about this piece and my background in this piece? I had to look a lot up, so some of you might know a little more than me. Elias, yes, and then Anne. Actually, let me Anne go first, because I want to hear.
Go ahead.
No, please.
No, go ahead.
Okay, Elias, jump in, and then Anne, you can fill
it. Okay,
please.
The piece is about 45 minutes long, and Strauss has the distinction of having been the first composer to become a millionaire, and he would have been overjoyed whether or not his estate made any money from this movie, that millions and millions of people were listening to this piece of music. Although we were only listening, the only part that was used in the movie is the first 90 seconds. But it's a great piece, and It's supposedly a musical representation of what was his name? Nietzsche's novel, Also Sprach Zarathustra.
Yes. Yes. Anne, you want to pipe in with other aspects of the piece? Okay. So this.
Can't unmute. Oh, there we go. That about covers it. I was gonna say the Nietzsche thing, but yeah.
Yes. So this is actually a book. Anne is right. This is this is a pictorial representation in a way, or a musical representation of the hit book then, Also Sprach Zarathustra, by Friedrich Nietzsche. So let me complicate this piece a little for you. So the book is really, if you look at Nietzsche's book, it's really an expression of his own philosophy through the mouth of this this character Zarathustra, who we'll get to in a Jewish context, or in a foil to Jewish context in a little bit. The piece is really goes by chapter, many chapters of the book, and sort of expresses different aspects of the book. And it is really sort of evoking, this sense that that the human being can no longer satisfy themselves with, religion or science or some of the things when they're confronted by nature as it is in its wonder, but also in its indifference. And actually, interestingly enough, in Also Sprach Zarathustra is when Nietzsche, the philosopher, introduces the concept, much abused, the concept of the Übermensch, yeah? So this is the concept of that in this post-God world, who will come to reroute us away from just plain nihilism? It's this superhuman being who will sort of fulfill all of the perfections of humanity in this newly morally brought together or post-morally brought together world. So with the Jewish associations with the Übermensch are probably make us feel a little. Let me take a more positive spin from the conductor Marin Aslop. She's a prominent conductor today, and she says, look through the sections that. Strauss, who was a huge fan of Nietzsche, he would be really happy, especially because of his connection to this piece, is that he wanted to convey Nietzsche's philosophical approach to this sense of what it means to look out at the world, which is really our big theme of today. How do we feel when we look out at the world? And she says that Nietzsche wanted us as human beings to reconsider our value system, and rather than blindly believing in a monotheistic God or an advancing scientific field, to start holding ourselves accountable for our own actions. So that's her read when she's writing program notes on this piece. Main point is this. So here we have these images of nature as wonderful, and that this piece is used in 2001: A Space Odyssey. We also have an image of nature as indifferent and maybe even terrifying, which could lead to different responses from human beings, as it has in all sorts of cultures all over the world. Sometimes you get from that a sense of nihilism. People look out at the world and they're like, you know what? I've seen what it is, and it's not that great, and therefore we need to look at some alternatives to whatever is telling us that it's good. Whether it's science or religion. I'm not going to pivot us with one more, our last clip of the day. I'm going to pivot us into Game of Thrones. Is anyone holding in Game of Thrones a little bit? Raise your hand if you've seen the show at all. All right. I'm not in a big Game of Thrones territory. Okay, that's okay. This is a big HBO show. I did say pop culture of prayer, so I had to go really far back and I had to go really recent. You know what? For the sake of time, I'll skip over that. No, it's 1 minute. I'll share you 1 minute of this clip, just so you can get a sense of that world and sort of how God operates, or not God, operates in that world. Here we go. Let's get out of the monkey scene. No more monkeys jumping on the bones. And this scene of a Queen Cersei Lannister talking to Sansa Stark, who's marrying, theoretically her family is marrying into the royalty that she is a part of. So let's just hear a minute of what she has to say about looking out at the world.
Sansa, come here, little dove. My queen, what are you doing? Praying. You're perfect, aren't you? Praying. What are you praying for? for the gods to have mercy on us all.
Oh. On all of us?
Yes, Your Grace.
Even me?
Of course, Your Grace.
Even Joffrey?
Joffrey is my...
Oh, shut up, you little fool. Praying to the gods to have mercy on us all. The gods have no mercy, that's why they're gods. My father told me that when he caught me praying. My mother had just died, you see. I didn't really understand the concept of death, the finality of it. I thought that if I prayed very, very hard, the gods would return my mother to me. I was 4.
Your father doesn't believe in the gods.
He believes in them, he just doesn't like them very much.
All right, that's it. That's just a little scene I wanted to show each of you. So this, by the way, if you look at a lot of pop movies today, movies and TV shows today, you see a lot of this sort of post-God stuff where people are like, I looked out of the world and it was Dreck, and therefore, I'm following my own path. And in a way, that's kind of like Nietzsche a little bit. That's a little like the Ubermensch. We look at nature is big and indifferent, and bad things happen to good people, and there's no, God is not the vending machine of goodness in the way that I've been told, and therefore, no. Or we're not just a vending machine of goodness. There's horrible things that happen, and therefore, I'm on my self-perfection quest or self-realization quest, as Cersei will be that character in a very, very bad way if you end up watching that show, which is quite a action-filled show if that's of interest to you. But the main point is this. Again, this is all a question of looking out at the world. And now we're going to get to our Judaism foil, the character of Zarathustra. And Zarathustra is actually a name for Zoroaster, who's the prophet of Zoroastrianism. This is a faith that Judaism actually has some experience in kind of getting up against and having dialogue with. It was a Persian religion which believed that in the world had 2 equally powerful deities, 2 equally powerful gods. Ahura Mazda, who was the creator, the light-bringing God, who created everything, who was the force of all positivity in the world. And then there was the bad God, who had equal power to the creator God, and that was Angra Mainyu. That was the evil, destructive spirit. And these were locked in opposition to one another. So let's do a thought experiment. If you're looking out at the world, you see it in wonder, and you also see it as 2 opposing gods. How are you going to feel? How is that going to affect your worldview, your choices, if you're seeing the world as the Zoroastrians did, as of the good God and the bad God against each other? How might that drive how you feel or act in the world?
If the world is equally balanced, then it doesn't matter what you do. The 2 gods are going to go on whacking each other for all eternity. So maybe prayer is irrelevant.
So maybe prayer is irrelevant because the world is struggle. These guys are just the good guy and the bad guy are just fighting, and maybe we have no say in that battle. Maybe our participation in that existence is a rounding error in what's going to happen in the real world. Other ways that might color how you live your life. I see your hand, Sylvia.
That could also bring some people to the point of what is the point and what does it matter? Who cares about life anymore? Because there's nothing that we can do, and we're all going to die at the end anyway. Oh, I sound like Kohelet, don't I?
Yeah, you sound like Kohelet, right? Like Ecclesiastes who said, it's not, there's no clear, it's not clear that the good stuff happens to the good guys and the bad stuff that happens to the bad guys. It's the opposite sometimes. Alex, please.
Hi, I'm going back to the Egel Zahav. The Egel Zahav or the Eight Sahara.
The golden calf, yeah.
Yeah, or the golden calf or the bad inclinations. When we get rid of our bad inclinations, then God reveals himself to us. When we are stopped by going through this and thinking that the gods are money, worshipping pop stars, worshipping the rabbis, and the rabbis are only correct. And, there's a barrier today that has been put up by the rabbi knows right from wrong. Whatever the rabbi says, if the rabbi says jump, you say, Rabbi, how high should I jump? Because of the ignorance that we are stopped from learning about prayer, about personal attitude towards religion. It's time immemorial, from the time maybe of Jesus Christ, when the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah were bent, possibly in that era, or the times of the Greeks, the times of the Romans, and history keeps repeating itself. So there are human beings who play a big part in stopping us as a whole praying to God, which is not tangible. So, in other words, we are starting to pray to believe in that the rabbis are the most powerful. But don't forget, there was no such thing as a rabbi in the times of the temple. There was no such. The Kohen Gadol was the be-all and end-all, plus the Levim with the orchestra and the choirs. The rabbis didn't come into any equations till the Reform movement brought it in the 1850s from Germany into the synagogue with the sermons and, copying Christianity. So
I'm sorry to cut you off, Alex. I do hear what you're saying about the what I really appreciate what you're saying is that when you look at the world in such black and white terms, life becomes uncomplex. You're either on the good team, whether you're talking about sort of rabbinic hegemony, or the bad team. And for the Zoroastrians, right, you're either on the side of the good God and following exactly what he says, or you're on the side of the bad God. There's no in between. There's no complexity.
Let's sum it up very quickly.
Very
then
quickly.
Hillel. Then there's Beis Hillel that says Ahavat Yisrael, and that's the good thing. So it's how all Abrahamic religions and other religions should treat people in a humane, loving, kind way, and that is the basis of all religion. The Torah is an explanation on that concept of how we treat our fellow man. And if we remember that's the concept that we should take with us wherever we go. That's my opinion.
I love that, and I think that's opinion that you perhaps could not have in the same way in this sort of classic Persian Zoroastrian way, which is that you're either the good guys or the bad guys. There's not this sort of sense of Ahavat Yisrael or Ahavat Ha'am, like a sense of oneness. There's just clear black and white sides, and just like there's two. It's like in some parts of classic Christianity, even though it's not an even match there between the God and the devil for Christians. Here, of Zoroastrians, it's an even match. So you need to be on the right side so that we push toward bend the arc towards justice. Otherwise, it's going to go the other way. In fact,
but don't also forget the fact that when the Hasidim came, the Baal Shem came about, and his disciples went around the world preaching that religion is open to everybody, not just a hierarchy. They were the first Reformed Jews of the modern era. And they were looked upon by people like the Vilna Gaon and as heretic and forbidden to go near and to touch. And even the Orthodox Jews, the ultra-Orthodox Jews, tried to get them incarcerated, like the Alter Rebbe, put into prison and so on and so forth.
Alex, we're getting a little far afield of today's topic, which I really like what you're saying, but I want to make sure we in the 23 minutes we have left. I'm sorry. I love your love of Ahavat Yisrael. I just want to make sure we're moving forward.
Sorry.
So the main point is this. In this, and again, just building on what things that have been said before, that this Zoroastrian way of thinking was actually one that Jews came in contact with, and that is part of what makes one of the prayers that we're going to look at today. So I'm going to turn now and give you two things. One is we're going to give you a look at the outline of the Shema and its blessings and how it is a map for engaging with God in different ways. And then we're going to specifically look at the Birkat Yotzer and see how it relates to this whole conversation about Nietzsche and wonder and 2001: A Space Odyssey and Game of Thrones and Zoroastrianism all at the same time. By the way, if you happen to ever watch Game of Thrones, which you don't need to, there is a very clear, actually, Zoroastrian style religion within that whole book series. If you look at it's the Lord of, there's a priestess of the what's called Riller, the Lord of Light, and there's an equally bad god, and they both fight against each other, and they're waiting for this one salvific figure to come and bend things in an ubermensch way in the right direction. So again, there's actually an interesting intersection between Zoroastrian and sort of the ubermensch style of thinking in that particular series. But now, deep breath. Spent a lot of time in pop culture. Now diving into Judaism, and we'll bring them both together. So this is just for those of you who may not know, this is just a little outline I made of the structure of Shema and its blessings. We all know Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. But really, for me, these are, around these, it says that there's the Shema, which is three keta'im, three little paragraphs from the Torah, and they're listed here. That it says that there's Shnaim Lefanea ve'echad achareha, two blessings before the Shema and one after. And if it's nighttime, there's Shnaim Lefaneha and Shnaim Achareha. If it's nighttime, there's an extra one. There's two after. For me, and we're really only going to be dealing with number one in the next 15, 20 minutes. But these are all ways of experiencing God. And and one thing I sort of think that's really interesting about them is that they're an increasing level of difficulty and increasing level of reward. The first blessing before the Shema is about Yotzer Or, God as the creator, experiencing God through the natural world, like we did looking at the beautiful horizons of the sun and the sun and the earth in 2001, and that we can experience whether we're out on Santa Cruz Island in California or in the moors in England, or seeing the beauty and the wonder of what there is out in nature. And that's something that's shared by all spiritual traditions and religions, pagan, monotheist. They take them in different directions, however. But that's level one. That's easy. So I would call it the easiest way to experience God. It's not always so easy, but it is the most graspable. The second blessing is ahava, rabba haftanu, or avat olam, that God has loved us by giving us the Torah, by giving us wisdom. And this is a second level of experiencing spirituality, which is experiencing God through love and wisdom, right? This is harder because you have to study. And you have to read and incorporate teachings into your life, and also possibly accept rules and limits on your life as part of that teaching, right? Wonder is a feeling, and it might elicit a response, but it's different from having a code or a set of principles by which you live your life. And so, again, for in Judaism, that giving of wisdom is experienced as an act of love, right? We love our kids. We want them to have a good and positive way of life and try to give them the best wisdom that we can to help them in that way. And then finally, Geula, which is after the experience of redemption. And there we have Micha Mocha, this scene of God at the sea saving the Jewish people. And that's the harder, that's the hardest one, perhaps the most rewarding one, is experiencing God through history, or in our own life story, that throughout everything that has happened, we feel like we are part of a greater story. We are part of God's, whether we feel God's active hand in the world, or we feel in partnership with God to realize something that transcends just this moment. And so this is my little feeling about how each of these blessings are wells for understanding our own spirituality. That said, let's dive into our source sheet so that we can bring everything that we've talked about, all the questions surrounding wonder and nature, and whether it leads us to more or less engagement together. Okay? All right. And now the final screen share, of which now you can, I put the in the chat, the source sheet, and those who were here earlier, I'll actually put the link to it again in the chat. No, I got to the coast. I got to put it to everybody. I think I've been doing Zoom for a number of 3 years now. There we go. There it is. But I'm going to share the screen, so it's going to make it easier for all of you anyway. There we go. That's not the right. Yes, there it is. Now you can see it. Light, darkness, and nature. Okay. So this is the first blessing after Baruch Hu, the first blessing of the section of that tripartite section we saw with Shema. And it says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvore choshech, oseh shalom uvore et hakol. Which means, blessed are you, Adonai, our God, King of the universe, former of light, creator of darkness, maker of peace, oseh shalom, by oseh shalom b'marav, right? Uvore et hakol, creator of all things. Now, just like last week, this is the hyperlink to something else. This is something else. And that is this Isaiah quote right here. Yotzer or uvore choshech, oseh shalom uvore ra. Like the Yetzer Hara, right? The evil inclination. I make weal and create evil. Or I make peace. Oseh shalom. I make peace. Uvore ra. I create evil. Ani Adonai oseh chol elem. So, why do you think that the rabbis, began the service of the whole morning, Shacharit service, with this statement about creation? And why do you think they changed the ending? And by changing the ending specifically, they changed Uvorei Hakol, God is creator changed the Isaiah quotation, a creator of evil, to creator of all things. I see Ria has a raised hand. Please.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, we wrestle with this today, and Job wrestled with this because God created Satan, and so this is the question that exists all the time. If God created everything, God created good, and God created evil. We don't want to deal with that, right?
Mm-hmm. So it's the rabbis they're dealing with a similar issue, which is how do we deal with God when there's evil in the world? They're dealing with theodicy, right? And maybe they don't want to say that in the morning that God created evil. That's not an appealing thing to pray on, even though Isaiah says it. Isaiah says it. Now, we should know. First of all, any other thoughts on why you think this is? Why you think the rabbis are changing this? How does it help or expand their ways of connecting to God when looking out at creation, or maybe it limits them?
Because we have a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Hara, and maybe this is a way of bringing it to the people and saying, not everything is good. So we have an evil inclination and a bad inclination, which God has given us a choice. So we can forever fighting these inward thoughts. And because we are created in God's image, we have to try and battle and good over evil. So that may be an answer.
So maybe there's a sort of a way that we're sort of changing the focus to our own battle against evil rather than focusing on evil outside the world that God may have created. I see Cantor Schwartz had his, Neil, you've had your hand up, and then I'll call on Marilyn and Sylvia.
The context in which Isaiah wrote that is the first part of Isaiah, not so much the comforting Isaiah as the stern Isaiah, who is part of the long stream of prophets who are chastising Israel for they're getting from God a historical comeuppance on their own behavior. That, to me, explains why that phrase, Uvorei Ra, would be there. However, after the disaster of the destruction of the Second Temple and being kicked out of the land of Israel, it makes perfect sense to me that the rabbis over there in the relative safety of Babylonia would swing away from that as they created our prayer service.
Mm-hmm. So there is a sense of Jews taking sort of a moral responsibility for whatever led to the destruction of the temple. They're reaffirming that this, in the Isaiah, in the second Isaiah context, that this is clearly, this is something was part of how God works and how the world works. This is not this is not an anomaly we need to learn. Marilyn, go ahead.
Yeah, I think partly it's to be aspirational and inspirational. So if we're going to say these words, do we want to just be accepting that, well, God created the bad, so, that's it, as opposed to, the reference to it that God created everything includes the bad, but we really want to focus on it's hakarat hatov and, positive. It's positive ancient style.
Beautiful. So we want to stay positive. This is a way of staying positive. Yeah, definitely. Sylvia, and then we're going to move forward in our source sheet.
Well, perhaps they didn't want to focus on the fact that everything comes from God, and including evil, so that we didn't get into that whole despairing thing that I alluded to before. That's not so difficult to do if we think that, that's from God too. Evil's from God too.
Yeah, they don't want to get into the whole Cersei Lannister, like, this, I was praying and this bad thing happened in my life, and God didn't prevent it, right? That's a big part of what actually. What caused Rabbi Harold Kushner of blessed memory to try to make a more faithful synthesis in his book When Bad Things Happen to Good People, which he wrote after his I think it was his son, who had been diagnosed at a very young age with a rare disease, and his son had died at 14 after a long battle with that illness. So I want to just move us forward a little bit. And by the way, this to add to what Cantor Schwartz said about the context of Isaiah, not only do we possibly have the Jewish people here saying, no, we have to learn from this experience, and therefore we have to see God's hand in it. We have to be inclusive of God's hand in it. But also at this time in exile, the Jews are living among Persians. And this is where the Zoroastrian piece comes in. Many biblical scholars look at this whole part of Isaiah 45, the whole chapter, and see a pushing back against the Zoroastrian thought at that time, which would say, no, it's the you just lost against the other God. If you were worshiping Ahura Mazda, the God of goodness and the creator God that we know all about here in Persia, that's where the goodness comes from. You guys were just on the wrong side, right? This is an equal battle, which is a very different idea. There is an idea, certainly in biblical Judaism, that there are things that are outside of God's, perhaps immediate control, but not that there's an opposing other God that's just waiting there, and that can tip the scales at any minute in this uncertain battle. So there's not just a possible taking of responsibility, but a deflecting of the idea that you guys are just on the wrong. You picked the wrong God. You guys have picked the wrong God. Can I get a reader for this? Is actually, by the way, this Yotzer moment that in Barachot, which we're about to read, if I can get someone to volunteer to read it after I say just about 20 seconds about it. In Barachot 11b, it discusses some of these major statements in the Shema and its blessings, in Ahava and Yotzer. And these are sort of some of the central statements from the earliest Talmudic era, just like we studied with the Avot last week. So these are, what we're reading is really actually an essential early rabbinic conversation about why and how we say these words. That these are some of the earliest words that the rabbis have for these blessings around the Shema. So can I get a reader for this text? They will manifest themselves and begin to read. Michael, I see Michael is raising his hand to read. Go ahead.
No, I actually want to contest the translation of the Shema to English. I think it's wrong in all English-speaking countries. It should not say, the Lord is our God. It should say, God is our Lord.
Yes, God is our. It's that God is our. I think that's a good observation. Thank you, Michael. Can I get a reader for the brachot source right here?
I'll read.
Please.
Okay. Who forms light and creates darkness? Let him say instead, who forms light and creates brightness? The Gemara answers, we say it as written. But if so, what about the continuation of the verse? Who makes peace and creates evil? Do we say it is as it is written? Rather, it is written evil, and we euphemistically recite all things. Here too, let us euphemistically say brightness. Instead, Rava said, in order to mention the attribute of day at night and the attribute of at night during the day. Granted, the attribute of night is mentioned during the day, as we say, who forms light and creates darkness. But where do you find the attribute of day mentioned at night? Abaye said from the evening prayer, rolling away light before the darkness and darkness before the light.
Thank you, Ria. So we could get into a longer discussion, but just for time, I'm gonna try to summarize quickly here. The rabbis are saying, we euphemistically say, uvorei hakol, God creates all things. We don't say out loud, that God creates evil when we're praying, because we don't want to emphasize that. You can interpret it in different ways. But why would we emphasize darkness? That's not good, right? We should say, who forms light and creates noga, who creates brightness. But Rava implies, no, it's actually important to talk about how God brings day and night together. We should talk about day at night and night and day. We should have both these coming together. And it quotes, Abaye says that comes in rolling hagulel or mipnei choshech uchoshech mipnei or. And for those of you who have been on Friday nights, this is indeed in the Friday night liturgy, right? It's Borei Yom Valayla. God creates day and night. Golel or mipnei choshech, rolls away light before darkness. V'choshech mipnei or, and darkness from before the light. Now, why do you think it's important? The rabbis are happy to say, let's not say evil when we're praying for any number of reasons that you could probably intuit or feel your way into. Why would we not emphasize darkness? Why is this duality important to pray into?
Can you ask the question again, please, Matt?
Yes. Why are the rabbis open to changing ra, evil, to borei hakol? They're open to changing the words, but they don't want to change the words of the pasuk yotzer or borei choshech. They don't want to not say that God creates darkness, whereas darkness is a bad thing. Why are they more comfortable keeping darkness and light together? Why is that important?
Because it shows the creation, and it's part of the form of creation from darkness and light. We have to, and it's the 6 days of creation. This is very, very important. The differences between darkness and lightness, between day and night, and maybe because of that, then we have to keep it.
Beautiful. So there is one way of understanding it is that there is, this is from the Torah, this is from Bereshit, that God, separated the darkness from the light. This is a fundamental part of what God's creation was from the very beginning, and you can't have the darkness without the light. This is part of how God rolls. Marsha also adds, because darkness is not a bad thing. It is as required as light. You need dark. You can't have, you can't have one without the other. And you can't look at the world, perhaps, without the other. Diane adds, darkness is not evil. I'll add, let me add one more thought to this. And this is actually what it's something that inspires me, at least I'm doing my own prayer, is that this is a prayer about how we experience nature, right? He's talking about looking at the sky and the heavenly bodies. And when you look out at nature, you could see a lot of things that look more like the monkey with the bone, right? That look like animals figuring out ways to be more destructive. But when you look out at the stars and looking at the changing of the days and the seasons, or at least the changing and moving of the heavenly bodies, that's something that's predictable, right? And at the end of this paragraph, it says, El Chai V'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Leolam Va'ed. Please reign over us forever and ever. That God's reign, that there's a sense of constancy. There's a sense of constant presence. And that when the rabbis are looking at nature, they're looking to connect to God in what is actually constant in nature, not in what is, in some ways, not in what's evolving in more power in the more 2001 sense. They're looking at what's consistent in life, what's constant for them. And for them, the changing of light and dark, of day and night, is a symbol of God being with them always, of God being constantly with them. Even though that's not all of what nature is, but that is what they're really hooking onto in terms of appreciating God as creator. Other thoughts on this blessing? With our 2 minutes left, or you can put it in the chat if you'd like, or when something else comes to you, I want to just bring two more quotes if I can get readers for them, or different ways of that modern rabbis have struggled with this, looking out at creation to find inspiration, which is really what this blessing is about, and finding God in that creation. Can I get a reader just for the short first paragraph? Elias, please.
Our faith does not allow us to attribute evil.
Oh, can you do the one above it? The one above it. Sorry. Perhaps creation.
Perhaps creation, the process of replacing chaos with order, is still going on. Suppose God didn't quite finish by closing time on the afternoon of the sixth day. The world is mostly orderly, but pockets of chaos remain. Or it may be that God finished his work of creating and left the rest to us.
Thank you, Elias. That's from Rabbi Harold Kushner of blessed memory, who just passed away in the last week. And for him, looking out at the world, he realized that he saw that there was chaos, that this wasn't all. He saw that there were things that were unfinished about this creation, that were chaotic, and he experienced that in his own life. And so he's left a wide body of teaching. Which has nurtured a lot of souls on that question. And can I get one last reader for this by my classmate? I think she's a year or two behind me, Rabbi Rachel Isaacs, a rabbi from JTS. She's in Maine, I believe. Can I get a reader for this last source?
I'll be happy to take it.
Thank you, Neil.
Our faith does not allow us to attribute evil to a bad second God, nor to a menacing Satan. If God is all-powerful, God is responsible for everything, which of course begs the question, who would choose such a God? The most straightforward answer is monotheists. Belief in one God requires us to attribute everything in the world to a solitary creator. It is also necessary to cultivate faithful people. In order to stay in relationship, whether with God or with one another, one must relinquish the ideal of monochromatic beings. Nature and resilient relationships can accommodate the good and the bad, the light and the darkness, the pleasure and the trouble. Our foundational relationships are not with Platonic ideals, pure and unadulterated in their essences. Rather, they are textured, complex, and challenging. In a world, they are real.
Thank you, Cantor Schwartz. So again, these are two ideas, perhaps in dialogue, perhaps slightly different than one another, between Rabbi Kushner's wonderful Torah and that of Rabbi Isaacs. For her, this is a model of, look, we're saying, God who creates everything, or Ra. This is like a real relationship, right? It's not like Zoroastrianism where we have the good God. It's all the good stuff. And if it's not that, it must be the bad God with the bad stuff. There aren't real relationships like that where we're in relationships with real people and real communities. And there are things that happen that are good, that people do that are good, and things that are less good. This is really a part of what it means to be resilient and faithful, is that you're staying in through good and bad. I have, let me just stop the share for a bit. I want us to I have two hands up, Sylvia and then Alex, and then I'll close us out for today.
Very quickly.
Please.
I love Rabbi Kushner's his statement there, and I've read the book. I always think of God as being like, I mean, doesn't it make you laugh? God is it like a factory worker, and the 5 o'clock whistle blows, and you haven't finished the Cadillac yet, but you're going home.
It's like with that we're yes, that God has created, and then there's stuff, and just our colleagues Diane here has said, Rabbi Heschel talks about the ongoing process of creation, and we're partners. So God's taken us this far, and we are working with what God has given us to make it even better, to make it even more so. I see Alex, and then we'll call it a day together.
But we also say in Hallel, Hashemayim Shemayim Lad Hashem Va'oretz Nosan Livnei Adom. So God will leave God to the heavens, and God says we leave man to this earth, and that was the whole reason for creation. Hashemayim Shemayim Lad Hashem Va'oretz Nosan Livnei Adom. So doesn't that cover all bases? So we've got enough to look after in this world, and God has enough to look after us and encompass us in the heavens and the creation and everything else that is nature, and the world the non-tangible world, so to speak.
Beautiful.
We have difficulty ourselves in formulating, with the brachas. Might be simple at the beginning because we go through a whole range of brachas, and it also says, we have to be thankful for this, the whole list of brachas at the beginning of the.
We'll get to that in 2 weeks.
The Zimra, and then through that, it gives us a list of everything. But the finality for me is God owns the heavens and the earth, but He's left us to try and make the best of what we have down here on earth.
Beautiful. So God is the owner of the building, and we are the super. Make sure it runs well. Well, thank you all for coming. I hope that our little ventures into Game of Thrones, but especially into 2001: A Space Odyssey, and recapturing that sense of wonder and what wonder leads to, is helpful in when you come back to see these prayer texts next, and thinking about what it means to appreciate God as a creator, and what that leads us to do and be in our relationship with God and relationship with others in our lives. Next week we will be in a very interesting place with moving in the reverse of the service. We started with the Amidah. Now we're on Shema, and then we're going backwards in the service to earlier and earlier to the Psukei de Zimra, the verses of Psalm at the song at the beginning of the service. And I look forward to learning that with you, with some pop culture references and intertextual allusions again next week. And I'll turn it over to Rabbi Tilchin if she has something to say.
Matt.
Okay. Thank you very much, Liz. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Not sure that Rabbi Marcia is still here.
I think she might not be here anyway. I'll stay on for about 5 more minutes, and I'll stop the recording. And thank you, everybody.